In the last video I made about David Hay, I mentioned the fact that I have studied psychology in the past, and it continues to this day to be an interest of mine, human psychology. And I said in that video that in my opinion, my unprofessional opinion, David Hay is a narcissist. I also floated around the term psychopath. Just for the record, I do not think David Hay is a psychopath, but nevertheless, it opened a debate. Well, I don't want to say a debate, but there was a few people who left comments talking about psychopathy, narcissism, etc. And I just want to expand on that a little bit. Excuse me. Now, for those people who haven't studied psychopathy, which is probably the majority of people, they will have a lot of misconceptions about what a psychopath actually is. When you say the word psychopath, people instantly think serial killer, some type of crazy thug, goes around stabbing people, shooting people, this, that, and the other. That's not normally what a psychopath is. Most psychopaths are not excessively violent like that. Okay, anybody who studied psychopathy will tell you this. Most people, anyway, will tell you this. Psychopathy is far more common than most people realize. Go look this up for yourselves, people. Don't take my word for it. But if you go look up the official statistics in the UK, the medical statistics, roughly 4% of the UK population display psychopathic traits and tendencies. Now, statistics are always, they're definitely not gospel. Let's just put it that way. But as a rough guide, 1 in 25 people in the UK are potential psychopaths. So many of you people will have come across psychopaths. They're not serial killers or anything like that. The majority of them anyway. Some of them definitely are, but the majority of them, they don't get their hands dirty like that. They'd rather get somebody else to do their dirty work for them. So with regards to boxing, again, the general public may have the misconception that if there are psychopaths in boxing, well, they're most likely going to be the boxers. The most brutal boxers, they must be psychopaths. No. Mike Tyson, for example, again, in my unprofessional opinion, is definitely not a psychopath. I contend that most of the psychopaths in boxing, and I think there is a lot of psychopaths in boxing, the vast majority of them are not boxers. The vast majority of psychopaths are managers, promoters, etc., etc. The people behind the scenes, sometimes on the camera, but more often than not behind the scenes, behind the camera. These are usually the psychopaths, because psychopaths are extremely manipulative. Boxers, most boxers, are in a position where they're getting exploited. Psychopaths are not in the business of being exploited. They like to be in the business of exploiting others and manipulating others. That's why they gravitate towards positions, jobs, and careers where they can have power over other people, where they can manipulate other people, where they can take advantage of other people. That's what psychopaths tend to do. They don't tend to like to put themselves in harm's way in a boxing ring fight. They don't like doing that kind of stuff. So I personally don't think that most fighters, I think very few fighters, put it this way, are psychopaths. Very few. There may be some. But if I was to give you an example of somebody in boxing who I've seen over many, many decades now, who I absolutely 100% believe is a psychopath, in my unprofessional opinion, it would be Don King. That guy is the epitome of a psychopath. He has no empathy, no sympathy. Mike Tyson once said about Don King, he doesn't know how to love people. And this is a common trait with psychopaths. They're just so empty inside and fake. They will give you the spiel. They're often, very beguiling. They'll give you all the spiel and get you to love them and like them. But they have no feeling and no compassion or affection for you. They're just using you. And very good examples of this was, if you've followed Don King as a promoter over the decades, he was famous for being in situations where one of his fighters would get beat. And he would go over to the other fighter in the ring, after his fighter's laying on the canvas, in the ring, and he'd start trying to schmooze with the other fighter who belongs to the other promoter and get in his good books, hoping to sign him. He wouldn't give a damn about his fighter who's stretched out on the canvas. And the most infamous example of it was when his fighter, Gerald McClellan, fought Nigel Benn in the UK. And McClellan obviously got horrifically injured in that fight. And as McClellan was laying down in the corner in a very bad way, unconscious, getting oxygen, Don King was over by Nigel Benn saying, yeah, you made a believer out of me, putting his arm around Nigel Benn and all this type of stuff, tapping his gloves. And this is a guy who walked to the ring with Gerald McClellan. This is a guy who was backing Gerald McClellan all the way. And while Gerald McClellan is on the floor in a coma, getting oxygen and the paramedics attending to him and all that, Don King didn't give a damn about him. He was looking at Nigel Benn like, I need to get a greater piece of Nigel Benn. I know Frank Warren is my business associate here in the UK, but I need to get a greater stake in Nigel Benn. That's all he started thinking about. The guy had no compassion, nothing. That is psychopathic behavior. Now, Don King, yes, he has killed 2 people in the past. But again, he killed those 2 people. One of them, I believe, was justifiable homicide because this is what the court ruled. Justifiable homicide because it was in self-defense. The other guy that he killed, he kicked the guy to death over some type of debt. Okay, so he has shown violence, but psychopaths are not really normally all about the violence. They're normally about getting from A to B and doing it by any means necessary, not giving a damn about who they tread on. And sometimes they do get a thrill. They do get, excuse me, they do get, they call it duper's delight. They get a thrill out of tricking people and out of deceiving people and conning them out of their money or whatever. Don King has got so many, or had so many legal battles with fighters over the years, you'd probably lose count how many fighters had this guy in court for trying to rip them off. He was obsessed with trying to get one over on people and try and be sly and backstab people. He was just upset. It was a compulsion. It got so bad that during his second spell with Mike Tyson, after Mike Tyson came out of prison, when Mike Tyson found out that this guy had been robbing him again, Mike Tyson actually confronted him. I believe it was outside some type of hotel, and he beat Don King up. And it weren't the first time that Mike put hands on Don King. Don King. And there are many people who study psychopathy who will tell you that psychopaths can't be cured. Their mental condition is lifelong and permanent. It's just how they are. And when it comes to psychopathy, psychopaths can come from any walk of life. They don't just come from ghettos and things like that. No, they can come from the richest families, the poorest families, in between. It don't matter. They can come from all over. In fact, from what I've seen, there is a higher concentration of psychopaths within the ruling classes. And, you look at politics and media, they are awash with psychopaths. But again, that's also because psychopaths tend to gravitate towards those kind of jobs because they get power and influence over people. They're very deceptive. They're very crafty. They're very manipulative. They have no remorse. They have no empathy. They have no sympathy. They just want to get whatever they can get, and they don't care how they do it. They don't like taking blame for anything. Anything they do, they will try and somehow blame it on somebody else. They will accuse other people of doing things which they themselves are doing. This is how the psychopath behaves. So, and also in business, high-level business, it's also awash with psychopaths. In fact, one of the things that psychopaths do is they're very good at influencing people. They're very good at, as I say, manipulating and influencing the way people think. And Western business, high-level Western business, is a extremely psychopathic culture. And just to show you how effective psychopaths are at manipulating people, they convince most people who are interested in business, talk about business, or whatever. They convince them that this dog-eat-dog world of business, this cutthroat world where there's backstabbing and all kinds of shenanigans and skullduggery, they convince people that behaving that way is legitimate. Well, it's just business. It's okay to screw people over. It's just business. That is psychopathic. And the reason why business is psychopathic, high-level business, is because it's overwhelmed with psychopaths. So they have created that culture. They've created a psychopathic culture, those psychopaths that run high-level business. And because psychopaths are willing to do stuff which other people are not willing to do, people with a conscience, that's why they're able to get up within a psychopathic system. Whereas normal people like us who have a conscience, we wouldn't be able to go to the lengths and the extremes of psychopaths. Although some people do. Some people get sucked in by the psychopathic culture. They get taken under the wing by these psychopaths, and they themselves are not born natural psychopaths, but they go along with what the psychopaths are doing. And that's what happens with a lot of people who go into business. People who are good people before start becoming psychopathic because of the genuinely born psychopathic people who have molded the system. And you see the same kind of thing in the world of boxing on the business side of it. Boxing is actually full of psychopaths because boxers are so vulnerable to being taken advantage of financially. So behind the scenes, anybody who's been in boxing, many boxers, I'm sure there must be some former professional boxers or current professional boxers who watch these videos. They'll tell you boxing is a horrible business behind the scenes. So many sharks and shady managers and unscrupulous people, many of which are definitely psychopaths. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to end this video right here. I just wanted to bring up the topic of psychopaths, psychopathy, not so much narcissism. I mentioned I mentioned David Hay in my previous video, and my opinion, my unprofessional opinion, that he's a narcissist. And a narcissist is basically somebody who is obsessed with themselves and obsessed with people praising them, people liking them, adulation, etc., etc. And they have an overinflated opinion of themselves. You look at David Hay's reaction after knocking out a god-awful opponent at the O2. Did David Hay look embarrassed to you, or did he look like he was reveling in the moment? Most fighters would have put it into context and said, it was okay. I knocked over some guy who's not very good. David Hay was like, yes. In my opinion, in my unprofessional opinion, he's a narcissist. Don King, the epitome of a psychopath. Are there some fighters out there who may be psychopaths? Some people are going to say Floyd Mayweather. I don't think Floyd Mayweather is a psychopath. I think he is definitely a narcissist, but psychopathic? Maybe, but I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Maybe some of you will disagree. If you do disagree, don't disagree just because you want Floyd Mayweather to be a psychopath. Disagree because you have some knowledge on psychopathy, please. If there are some people out there who do have PhDs in psychology, then by all means, comment in the comment section below. I'll be very interested to hear from you. Now, psychology is not an exact science. This has to be said. Psychology is not like physics or chemistry or biology. It's not like that. In psychology, there is far greater differences, let's just say, between different experts in the field. Psychologists disagree very strongly across the board on many different subjects, because basically psychology is the science of the human mind and human behavior. That's what psychology is. And human behavior in the human mind is open to a lot of interpretation. That's why psychology can never be an exact science. There's a lot of interpretation in there, and different psychologists have their own interpretations of the same things. So that has to be said. But nevertheless, if there are any psychologists out there watching the video, I'd like to hear from you, or anybody who, like me, is, somebody just very interested in psychology, particularly psychopathy and what have you. So yeah, drop it all in the comment section below, people. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.